After my grandson was born, I received an eviction letter from my daughter-in-law. "The rightful heir has been born," she said. But what she didn't know was that I'd already hidden a 2 million fortune, a gift left to me by my late husband. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story travels. My name is Eileen. I'm 72 years old. Yesterday should have been one of the happiest days of my life, the day my grandson came into this world. But today, I'm holding an eviction notice from my own daughter-in-law. It arrived this morning. Freya handed it to me herself, smiling in that cold, practiced way of hers. She knocked on my bedroom door, the same room in the house I helped pay for, and walked in as if she owned the place. "Good morning, Eileen," she said sweetly. "I have something for you." I was still in my nightgown, thinking about my grandson, little Thomas, his tiny hands, that soft baby scent that pulls you back through time. I had held him for only 3 minutes before Freya decided that was enough. "What is it, dear?" I asked, though her tone had already told me I wouldn't like the answer. She handed me an envelope. "Open it," she said. The paper felt heavy, expensive. As I read the words, my hands began to tremble. "Notice to vacate. You have 30 days to leave this residence. The legitimate heir has now been born, and your services are no longer required." "Services?" I whispered. 43 years of raising a family, and she called it services. Freya sat down by the window like a queen explaining rules to a servant. "It's quite simple," she said. "Brent and I have our son now. We need the space. You've been staying here rent-free for 2 years. It's time you learn to take care of yourself." 2 years. 2 years since my husband Tyson passed away, and I was left with nothing but this room in my own son's house. 2 years of being treated like an unwelcome guest in the home where I once raised him. "Where's Brent?" I asked softly. "At work," she replied. "Someone has to provide for this family." Then she looked at her perfect nails and added, "He knows, of course. We discussed it." So my son knew. My own child knew his wife was sending me away, and he stayed silent. "Freya, please," I said. "Can't we talk about this? I help with the baby, the meals, the house." "That's exactly the problem," she cut in sharply. "You hover, you interfere, you make me feel like a guest in my own home." The irony was cruel. I'd been made to feel like a guest in my own son's life for years. "I raised Brent in this house," I said quietly. "His father is gone," she snapped. "Brent is my husband now. This is our family, our home. You're just in the way." Each word hit harder than the last. I looked around my small room, the photo of Tyson and me, my mother's handmade quilt, the bookshelf filled with a lifetime of stories. 30 days, Freya repeated as she stood. "I think that's generous, considering." "Considering what?" I asked. She paused at the door, her eyes turning cold. "Considering you never really belonged here anyway." When she left, the house fell silent except for the soft cries of the baby, my grandson, the little boy I had dreamed of loving and teaching. I thought about calling Brent. But what would I say? He already knew. The truth is, I'd been preparing for this moment without realizing it, not for the eviction, but for the day I'd have to stop pretending I was powerless. Freya made one big mistake. She believed my quiet nature meant weakness. She assumed that when Tyson passed, I was left with nothing but the clothes on my back and this room. She was wrong. Hidden in a safety deposit box across town was 2 million, Tyson's life insurance, his retirement savings, and assets Freya never knew existed. I kept it secret not out of greed, but out of caution. I had planned to use it for my grandson's future, but sitting there with that letter in my lap, I finally understood something, before I could protect anyone else's future. I needed to reclaim my own dignity. Freya wanted me gone. Fine. But she had no idea what she'd just unleashed. The boxes arrived that same afternoon, ordered online with same-day delivery just to make her message clear. I found them neatly stacked outside my bedroom door like a countdown to my disappearance. As I started folding my clothes, every fabric, every button carried memories I'd tried so hard to forget. The blue dress I wore to Brent's college graduation, bought secondhand because every spare penny had gone toward his tuition. The cardigan with a hole in the elbow I never replaced because Brent needed new textbooks that semester. People call a mother's sacrifice a beautiful thing. They don't talk about how it quietly empties you, piece by piece, until you forget the person you used to be before your world revolved around someone else's future. When Tyson had his first heart attack and Brent was 16, I took extra shifts at the department store. Tyson couldn't work construction anymore, and college dreams aren't cheap. Scholarships helped, but not enough. I still remember the morning I sold my grandmother's pearl necklace. Brent needed a laptop for his final year, and we were late on the mortgage. I told Tyson I'd misplaced it. I couldn't stand to see guilt in his eyes. Some sacrifices are meant to stay invisible. When Brent was accepted into State University, I cried for 3 days straight, proud and terrified at once. The tuition nearly broke us. I started cleaning offices on weekends, leaving home at 5 in the morning and coming back after midnight. Tyson was growing weaker, but he never complained. He knew exactly why I was doing it. "She's building his future," I once heard him tell his brother. "A mother does what she must." The irony? I thought I was teaching Brent about hard work and gratitude. Instead, I taught him that mothers give everything and expect nothing in return. After Tyson passed, I could have told Brent about the insurance money, $2 million that could have changed both our lives. But I looked at my son, heartbroken, overwhelmed, trying to support his new wife. And I made a decision. I would live simply, help quietly, and keep that money safe for true emergencies. Moving into Brent's house was supposed to be temporary, just a few months until I figured out my next step. But Freya had other ideas. She entered that home like a storm. Within weeks, she'd rearranged the furniture, cleared out Tyson's things without asking, and made it painfully clear that my stay was tolerated, not welcomed. The kind, polite young woman I'd known during their courtship disappeared the moment she slipped on that wedding ring. "Eileen, could you handle the laundry today? I'm just exhausted." "Eileen, would you mind making dinner? You know how Brent loves your pot roast." "Eileen, I've invited some friends over. Could you maybe stay in your room for the evening?" I became the invisible helper, useful but unseen. And Brent, ever eager to please his beautiful wife, didn't notice how she spoke to me. Or maybe he chose not to. The hardest part wasn't the work, or even the humiliation. It was watching my son, the boy who once defended me against playground bullies, stand by silently while his wife dismissed me like background noise. "She's just particular about her space," he'd say when I tried to talk about it. You know how women can be about their homes. Their home. Not the family home where he grew up. Not the place Tyson and I built together. Their home, where I'd somehow become the intruder. When Freya became pregnant, things only got worse. Suddenly she was delicate, precious, and I was the designated caretaker. Morning sickness, grocery runs, doctor visits. When Brent couldn't take time off, I did it all. Gladly. I truly believed this baby might bring us closer together. Instead, it became her favorite excuse. "The baby needs stability," she'd say whenever I suggested helping. "Too many people around will confuse him. Brent and I need to find our rhythm, without interference." And Brent, exhausted from overtime, would just nod, not realizing the trap she was setting. The night before little Thomas was born, I helped her pack her hospital bag. She was already having contractions but still needed to control every detail. "I only want immediate family in the delivery room," she announced through gritted teeth. "Of course," I said, assuming I was included, but she looked at me like I was naive. "I mean Brent, me, and my mother, obviously." Her mother, the woman who'd visited twice during the pregnancy and spent both visits criticizing everything from the nursery colors to Brent's career. So I waited. 14 hours in that hospital waiting room. 14 hours watching families come and go, listening to the rhythm of doors opening and closing. Brent would stop by with updates. "You don't have to wait, Mom," he said gently. "It might be a while." But where else would I go? This was my grandson, my family. my heart now walking around outside my body in the form of a 7-pound miracle, and when I finally held Thomas for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, pure, uncomplicated joy. That tiny child in my arms. He was part of me, part of Tyson, part of the love story we'd written together. I should have known Freya wouldn't let that moment last. Now, as I packed my life into cardboard boxes, the truth of her plan became painfully clear. The pregnancy had been her strategy. The baby, her ultimate advantage. She'd waited until she had it all. A house, a husband completely wrapped around her finger, and an heir to secure her place. Then she made her final move, removing me from the picture. The apartment I found was exactly what Freya probably imagined for me. Small, old, faded, the kind of place where a 72-year-old woman quietly disappears. I paid the deposit in cash from my checking account, the one I'd kept deliberately modest, showing just enough to seem like a struggling widow living on a small pension. The landlord, Mr. Chen, didn't ask questions. "Fresh start?" he asked as he handed me the keys. "Something like that," I replied. Moving day was quiet, painfully quiet. Brent came by for half an hour, carried a few boxes, and said he had to get back to work. He wouldn't even look me in the eye. "This is probably for the best, Mom," he said softly. "You need your independence. Freya and we need our space. Independence." At 72, after a lifetime of marriage and motherhood, I was finally getting my so-called independence. The word tasted bitter. "What about Thomas?" I asked. "When can I see him?" Brent shifted awkwardly. "We'll figure something out. Maybe holidays." Maybe holidays. My grandson, my only grandchild, would know me as the woman who appeared once or twice a year. The first month in that tiny apartment was the loneliest of my life. I went from a home full of movement, even uncomfortable movement, to total silence. Through the thin walls, I could hear neighbors cooking, laughing, arguing, living their lives, while I sat alone, wondering how I'd become invisible in my own family's story. I called Brent twice a week, always cheerful. "How's the baby? Is he sleeping through the night yet? Has he smiled?" He answered politely, but his voice felt distant, like he was fulfilling an obligation. Then one call changed everything. "Brent, honey, tell the delivery man to bring the bags upstairs." Freya's voice echoed clearly through the phone. "The Chanel bags go in the master closet." Bags, plural. "Mom, I have to go," Brent said quickly. "What delivery?" I asked, but the line had already gone silent. That night, I couldn't sleep. Chanel bags weren't exactly in the budget of a construction foreman. Those bags cost more than most people's rent. A week later, curiosity, or maybe instinct, got the better of me. I drove by the house, my old house. A shiny red BMW gleamed in the driveway. Brent's old Honda was gone. I parked across the street and waited. An hour later, Freya appeared, dressed head to toe in designer clothes I'd seen in magazines. She placed little Thomas into a car seat that probably cost more than my entire grocery bill for the month, then drove away. I followed, slowly, carefully, through the upscale shopping district downtown, boutiques, jewelry stores, cafes I'd never dared step into. When she finally emerged from one of them, she had new diamond earrings sparkling in the sunlight. That evening, I called Brent again. "How are things at work, honey?" I asked. "Tough," he sighed. "We're working 10-hour days just to make ends meet. Babies are expensive, you know." Make ends meet, while his wife wore diamonds and drove a new BMW. "Are you getting enough help at home?" I asked gently. "Freya does what she can," he said. "She's exhausted. She deserves something nice after everything she's been through." After everything she'd been through. As if being a mother was something only she had ever done. Over the next few weeks, I made it my quiet mission to understand what was happening. I started taking walks through their neighborhood, timing them for when Brent would be at work. The BMW became a permanent fixture, surrounded by shopping bags from luxury stores. Then came the breaking point. One Thursday afternoon, as I passed their house, I heard voices through the open window. "I don't care what your mother thinks," Freya shouted. "She had her chance to matter and she blew it. This is our life now." "She just wants to see Thomas," Brent's voice, soft, pleading. "She can see him when I say she can," Freya snapped. "She's not taking over my son the way she tried to take over you." Take over? I had raised him, loved him, sacrificed everything for his future. If that was control, then what was she doing now? "She's lonely, Freya," Brent tried again. "Maybe if you just what?" Freya's voice turned cold. "Let her come back? Undermine everything I'm building? Your mother is a bitter old woman who can't accept that her time is over. The sooner you realize that, the better." Bitter old woman. I froze on the sidewalk, every word carving itself into my memory. Then I heard Brent's quiet reply, the one that finally broke me. "Maybe you're right." And just like that, my heart, the same one that had once beat for my family above all else, shattered. That night, I sat in my small apartment and made a choice. For 2 months, I'd been living like a ghost, feeling sorry for myself, replaying every cruel word, every loss. I had been acting like the discarded mother, the forgotten wife, but I'd forgotten something important. I was Tyson Murphy's wife, the woman who'd worked 3 jobs to put her son through college, the woman who'd held her family together through illness, hardship, and loss. I wasn't broken, I was still standing, and it was time for Freya to understand the difference between a victim and a survivor. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized but never used. Henderson Private Investigations, a calm professional voice answered. "Yes," I said steadily, for the first time in months. "I'd like to hire a private investigator." Marcus Henderson looked exactly how you'd imagine someone in his line of work. Tired eyes, weathered face, a man who'd seen too much of life to be easily surprised. His small office was cluttered, but his quiet confidence made me feel safe. "Mrs. Murphy," he said, pouring 2 cups of coffee. "What can I do for you?" I'd rehearsed this moment, but sitting there I suddenly felt foolish. "I want you to investigate my daughter-in-law." He didn't even flinch. "Any particular reason?" "She's spending money that doesn't exist," I said. "At least, not the kind that should exist with my son's salary." Marcus took out a notepad. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about Brent's income, about the BMW, the designer clothes, the shopping trips. I told him how I'd been thrown out of my son's house, how Freya had cut me off from my grandson. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. "Mrs. Murphy," he said carefully, "I have to ask, is this about revenge or about protecting your son?" The question caught me off guard. I want to protect Brent," I said. "But I also want to understand what's happening, because in my experience, when someone suddenly has money they shouldn't, it usually comes from one of 3 places." I paused. Family money they've hidden, something illegal, or someone else. Marcus's gaze sharpened. "Someone else," he repeated. The words hung in the air. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly. "I mean," he said, "maybe your daughter-in-law has a benefactor, someone who isn't your son." The possibility hit me like a spark in the dark, and suddenly everything started to make sense. Freya's sudden confidence after the baby, her eagerness to get rid of me, her unshakable belief that she could do whatever she pleased without consequences. "How long would an investigation take?" I asked. "That depends," he replied. "Could be a week, could be a month. My retainer is $1,500. I wrote the check from the account Freya didn't know existed. My secret lifeline. "I want to know everything," I said. "Where the money's coming from, who she's talking to, what she's planning." Marcus slipped the check into a drawer. "May I give you some advice?" I nodded. "Whatever we find," he said gently, "it's probably going to hurt. Information like this usually does. Are you ready for that?" I thought of the past 2 months. The loneliness, the silence, the way my son had chosen his wife's version of the truth over his mother's love. "Mr. Henderson," I said quietly, "I've already been hurt. Now I just want the truth." The waiting was torture. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing. I tried to keep busy. grocery runs, library visits, long walks around the neighborhood, but my mind was always somewhere else. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. "Mrs. Murphy," Marcus said, "we need to meet, and you might want to sit down for this conversation." His office felt smaller that day, the air heavier. A thick folder sat on his desk, and his expression was grim. "I'll be direct," he said. "Your daughter-in-law is having an affair." The words hit me like a physical blow, even though some part of me had already known. "With who?" I whispered. "Richard Castellano," he said. "He owns 3 car dealerships in the area. Married, 2 kids, net worth around $8 million. $8 million! No wonder Freya could afford designer everything. "How long?" I managed to ask. "Based on what I can confirm, at least 6 months, probably longer." He slid a photograph across the desk. "This was taken last Tuesday, the Riverside Hotel." I looked down, at Freya, in another man's arms, her head tilted back in laughter. I hadn't seen her that happy once during her entire marriage to my son. "There's more," Marcus said quietly. "She's been telling people she plans to leave your son once she secures a generous settlement. She's using the baby as leverage." My stomach turned. My grandson, my sweet innocent Thomas, being used as a pawn in her game. "What kind of settlement?" I asked. Marcus sighed. "She's been documenting everything your son owns. She believes he has family money hidden somewhere." I felt a cold, steady anger rise inside me. If she wanted to play games with money, she was about to learn what real power looked like. I almost laughed at the irony. Freya was searching for hidden family money, completely unaware that the woman she'd thrown out like yesterday's trash was quietly sitting on $2 million. But Marcus wasn't done. "She's also been telling people that your son is emotionally unstable," he said carefully, "and that she's afraid to leave because he might try to take the baby." The words made me feel physically sick. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Brent wouldn't hurt a fly." "I believe you," Marcus said. "But she's creating a story. If she files for divorce and claims she's been mistreated, she gets sympathy, a bigger settlement, and probably full custody." Full custody. She would take Thomas away from Brent completely, just like she'd taken Brent away from me. "There's more," Marcus continued. "She's already spoken with a lawyer. The divorce papers are drawn up. She's just waiting for the right moment." I sat there, numb, feeling the walls close in. My son was about to lose everything, his wife, his child, his home, and he had no idea. But I did. "What would you do?" I asked Marcus quietly. "If it were your son?" He leaned back in his chair. "Honestly, I'd warn him, but I'd also prepare for the possibility that he won't believe you. Love makes people blind, Mrs. Murphy, even when the truth is staring them in the face." His words stayed with me long after I left his office. Brent, my hard-working, gentle Brent, was out there working 10-hour days to support a woman who was planning to destroy him. The same woman he'd defended so fiercely that he'd cast his own mother aside. Then an idea began to form. Risky, cruel maybe, but it might be the only way to save my son. "What if, I said slowly, "we let her show her true colors herself?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "What if we gave her enough rope to hang herself?" For the first time in months, I smiled. A quiet, steady smile. "I have a plan," I said, "but first I need to make a withdrawal." The plan was simple, and that's what made it perfect. Freya thrived on weakness. She fed on other people's helplessness like it was oxygen, so I decided to give her exactly what she wanted to see. First, I withdrew $5,000 from my secret account and opened a small checking account at a new bank, one Freya might accidentally discover. I made sure the balance looked just right, low enough to suggest struggle, high enough to seem believable. Then I picked up the phone. "Brent, honey," I said softly, adding just a touch of tremble to my voice. "I hate to bother you, but I'm having some trouble with my rent. Could you help? Just this once?" There was a long silence. "Mom," he said finally, "you know things are tight with the baby and everything. I understand, sweetheart. I just thought, maybe you could ask Freya if she knows anyone who might need help with cleaning or errands. I'm willing to work. Another pause. I'll ask her. I knew he would, and I knew exactly how Freya would respond. 3 days later, the call came. From her. Eileen, she began, her voice dripping with polite concern. Brent told me about your situation. I might have something that could help. Oh, thank you, dear, I said warmly. I'm so grateful. Well, she continued, I have friends who might need household help, but they're particular. I'd have to vouch for you personally. Of course, I said, I'd be happy to provide references. Actually, she said, why don't we meet for coffee first? Tomorrow afternoon, Cafe Luna downtown. She paused, her tone full of meaning. I just want to make sure you understand what would be expected of you. Cafe Luna, trendy, overpriced, exactly the kind of place Freya loved to be seen. Perfect, I said. I'll be there. And Freya. Thank you for the opportunity. Don't thank me yet, she said, and I could practically hear the smirk in her voice. The next morning, I prepared carefully. I pulled out my oldest clothes, the ones I used to wear when I cleaned houses decades ago. I styled my hair plainly, wore no makeup, and practiced a weary, defeated expression in the mirror. When I arrived at Cafe Luna, Freya was already there, surrounded by 2 other women I didn't recognize. She'd clearly been telling them about me, because when they looked up, their eyes held the same mix of pity and superiority. Eileen! Freya called out, loud enough for half the cafe to hear. Come sit with us. I shuffled over, clutching my worn purse like a lifeline. The other women introduced themselves, Linda and Margaret, both dripping with jewelry and judgment. So, you're Brent's mother, Linda said, giving me a quick once-over. Freya's told us about your situation. Yes, well, I said softly, letting my voice waver. Things have been a bit difficult since my husband passed. Of course, Margaret said with a tight smile. It must be hard. At your age. Freya waved the waiter over. We'll all have the kale and avocado salad, she said, $30 a plate, and iced lattes. She didn't even glance my way to ask what I wanted. Perfect. I could already see her testing me, waiting to confirm that I really was as desperate as she believed. Now, Freya said, leaning forward, her tone sweet and sharp all at once, about this job opportunity. The Ashfords are looking for someone to clean their home twice a week. Big house, 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. They host a lot of events. That sounds wonderful, I said brightly. What does it pay? $15 an hour, Freya replied, studying my face for disappointment. Cash, of course, under the table. $15 an hour to clean a mansion, less than minimum wage, and she said it like she was doing me a favor. I'll take it, I said at once. When can I start? Well, she said smoothly, there's one small issue. Her voice took on that syrupy tone she used when she was about to twist the knife. They require a security deposit, $200. It's a precaution to ensure nothing goes missing. $200. Money she knew I couldn't spare. I'm not sure I have that much, I said, letting just enough panic creep into my voice. Oh, that's unfortunate, Linda said, pretending sympathy she clearly didn't feel. The Ashfords are very particular about their help. Maybe, I offered desperately, I could work for free the first few weeks to prove myself? Freya exchanged a look with her friends. I don't think that would work, she said. They need someone who can commit financially. Please, I whispered. I'm behind on my rent. I might lose my apartment. The satisfaction in Freya's eyes was unmistakable. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, to see me small, defeated, begging. Well, she said slowly, I suppose I could lend you the money, as a family loan. You would do that? I asked, tears glistening. Of course, she said sweetly. Family helps family. She pulled out her phone, pretending to calculate. $200 for the deposit. Plus interest. Let's say 25%. You'll owe me $250. 25% interest on a family loan. Even real lenders charged less. I don't know how to thank you, I said softly. Don't thank me yet, she replied with a cool smile. I'll need you to sign a promissory note, and if you can't repay it in 30 days, there will be additional fees. She reached into her purse and, without hesitation, produced a folded document and a pen, clearly prepared in advance. The terms were even worse than what she'd said aloud: compound interest, late penalties, even a clause that let her claim my belongings if I defaulted. This seems a little complicated, I murmured, scanning the paper. Business is business, Eileen, she said sharply. If you can't handle simple obligations, perhaps you're not ready to work for people like the Ashfords. Her friends nodded, amused. Of course, I said, signing with a trembling hand. I'm just grateful for the opportunity. Freya counted out $200 in cash, loudly, dramatically, making sure the whole cafe saw her generosity. There you go, she said. Don't disappoint me. I won't, I promised, clutching the money like it was my lifeline. As I walked toward the door, I heard her voice, not quite quiet enough to be private. Some people never learn to take care of themselves, she said. Laughter followed me out, sharp and cruel, but I wasn't crying. I was smiling. Because in that cafe, surrounded by witnesses, Freya had just exposed exactly who she really was, and the recorder hidden in my purse had captured every word, every mocking laugh, every false kindness, every trap she'd set. Now, I finally had proof. Proof my son couldn't ignore. 3 weeks later, the phone rang on a quiet Sunday morning. Mom! Brent's voice sounded hollow, cracked. I need to see you. Of course, honey. What's wrong? Not over the phone, he said. Can you come over? Freya's at her mother's with the baby. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in the living room that used to feel like home, watching my son pace like a caged soul. He looked terrible, pale, thinner, years older than his 32. She's leaving me, he said flatly. Freya's filing for divorce. My heart ached for him, even though I'd known this day would come. Oh, Brent, I'm so sorry. She says I'm controlling, manipulative, that I make her feel unsafe. He gave a bitter laugh. She's taking Thomas. I might only get supervised visits. That's absurd, I said firmly. You're the gentlest man I know. Try telling that to her lawyer, he muttered. He sank into his father's old chair, his voice breaking. She's claiming I've been hiding money, that I have secret assets. She wants half of everything, plus support payments. Hidden assets. The irony would have been almost funny if it hadn't been so tragic. Brent, I said quietly, there's something you need to know about Freya. He looked up, eyes desperate. What do you mean? I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, but saying it aloud still felt heavy. She's been lying to you, I said softly, about a lot of things. And then I told him everything, about the investigation, about Richard Castellano, about the months of secrets, manipulation, and betrayal. I showed him the photographs, played him the recording from the cafe, laid out every piece of proof, Freya's words, her schemes, her cruelty. With each revelation, Brent's face grew paler. When I finally stopped talking, he just sat there, silent, motionless. How long have you known? He asked at last. About the affair? A few weeks. About her plan to leave? I sighed. Not long enough to stop it, I'm afraid. Why didn't you tell me sooner? The question I'd been dreading. Because, I said gently, you wouldn't have believed me. You needed to see it for yourself. He flinched, but didn't deny it. We both knew I was right. There's something else, I said softly. Something I should have told you long ago. I reached into my purse and handed him a bank statement. His eyes widened as he saw the balance. 2 million? He whispered. Your father's insurance, I said quietly. His retirement funds. Some investments you didn't know about. I've been keeping it safe. All this time, he said in disbelief, You've been living in that tiny apartment, letting Freya treat you like—" He couldn't finish. "Like hired help?" I said gently. "Like a burden?" He nodded, ashamed. "Yes," I said. "But I had my reasons." "Why? Why didn't you just tell me?" I took his hands, the same hands that had built his life through hard work and sacrifice. "Because I wanted to see who you were without money involved," I said. I needed to know if the man I raised was still there underneath everything else. He swallowed hard. "And what did you find?" "I found a man who loves his family so much he'd give up everything for them," I said softly, "even his relationship with his mother." Tears spilled down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I'm so sorry for everything." "I know, sweetheart," I said, holding his hand. "I know. What do I do now? She's going to take Thomas. She'll ruin me in court." I smiled. That same calm, steady smile Tyson used to call my secret weapon. "No," I said, "she won't, because this time we'll play by her rules and win." Over the next hour, I explained the plan. We'd let Freya move forward with the divorce, let her believe she was winning. But every move she made would be documented, her affair, her lies, her manipulation. When the time came, we'd show the truth, not as anger or accusation, but as evidence. "And the money?" Brent asked quietly. "It'll be protected," I said. "Locked in a trust fund for Thomas. Freya can't touch it, but it'll secure his future." "What about you?" he asked. "What about your future?" I looked around the house where I'd raised him, where Tyson and I had built a lifetime together. It felt different now, lighter somehow, as if the walls had finally exhaled. "I'm going to buy a house," I said with a smile. "A real home, with a guest room for my son, and a nursery for my grandson, a place where family is actually welcome." 3 months later, I stood in the kitchen of that very home, sunlight pouring through wide windows as Brent pushed Thomas's stroller across the backyard. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks earlier. When confronted with proof of her affair and her deceit, Freya had agreed to joint custody rather than risk everything in a public trial. She kept the BMW and her designer clothes, but lost the house, the security, and the control she'd fought so hard to build. As for Richard Castellano, he vanished the moment his wife discovered the truth. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. At the door stood a delivery man with an enormous bouquet of flowers. "Eileen Murphy?" he asked. "That's me," I said, signing for the delivery. The card read, "Thank you for never giving up on us. Love, Brent and Thomas." Through the kitchen window, I watched my son lift his little boy from the stroller, pointing up at the trees and laughing, the sound of peace returning home. Thomas would grow up surrounded by love. He would learn that family means showing up, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. He would understand that real strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's patient, and sometimes it looks like forgiveness. I thought of Freya, probably sitting alone in some polished apartment, wondering how everything had fallen apart. She'd made one fatal mistake. She mistook kindness for weakness, sacrifice for surrender. But I had never been weak. At 72, I had reclaimed not just my dignity, but my family. And for the first time in years, the future looked every bit as bright as I'd always dreamed it would be. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Have you ever faced something similar in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And before you go, check out the 2 stories on your screen right now. They're both audience favorites, and trust me, their endings will surprise you. Thank you for watching until the end.